we have a great opportunity and a great honor. Laurent, I want to say that, and I want to emphasize the fact that it's a great opportunity, a great honor to welcome you. He is executive director and founder of Forbidden Stories. It's very important to understand what is it. Laurent Richard is a journalist, documentary producer, and director of the Forbidden Stories. For over 20 years, Laurent Richard has conducted international investigation and has produced television reports. At the age of 25, he traveled to the Kashmir Valley to film the conflict between India and Pakistan, as well as to Palestine during the beginning of the Second Intifada. In 2004, he conducted an investigation for French public televisions entitled Jihad in Iraq, Forbidden Words. He also author of several investigations targeting the tobacco industry's lies, the excesses of the financial sectors and the clandestine actions carried out by Mossad of CIA. Because he is passionate about both substance and narrative form, he co-founded the investigative magazine, probably you've heard about it, the French one, Cache Investigation, in 2011, on air on the France Télévision. In 2015, Laurent received the Best Investigation Award at Friga for his documentary, My President is on a Business Trip. In 2016, he was selected by the University of Michigan, where he received a one-year fellowship during which he developed the ideas and concept of a global network of journalists whose mission is to continue the investigation of reporters who have been killed, imprisoned, or threatened. On November 2, 2017, the Forbidden Stories Consortium was launched during the conference in Washington, D.C. The first investigation, coordinated by Forbidden Stories, was the Daphne Project, published in June 2018, several months after the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia. The Daphne Project brought together 45 journalists and 18 media outlets, including the New York Times and in the United States, Le Monde in France. The organization's message is the following: you have killed the messenger, but you will not kill the message. Since its inception, Forbidden Stories has several awards, including the prestigious European Press Prize, the George Polk Award, and the RSF Impact Award for the Pegasus Project, published in 2021. As a documentary producer, Laurent Richard has produced, among others, the series Green Blood, which won the European Award for Best European Documentary Series in 2020. Laurent Richard has spoken at numerous institutions in France, Europe, as well as Harvard, Yale, University of Michigan, but so far not at ESSEC Business School, and that's why you are here today. Thank you very much. Please a big round of applause to Laurent Richard.
Thank you. Oops. Maybe I can give. Thank you for the intro, for the very nice intro. I'm very happy to be with you. It's really an honor to be there for this Imagination Week. I will try to share about a bit of my experience with you, and after that, I think that we're going to have a discussion as well. I'm very thrilled to be there, and very excited about something as well, that I'm in front of future CEOs, future managers, top executives of many companies that you will create in the next months or years. And I'm very happy to meet you today, because I honestly spent a part of my life chasing CEOs. And usually, CEO don't like me too much. Usually, they don't like me too much because they don't like when they see my phone number appearing on the screen when I'm calling them. They don't like the kind of question we are sending by emails when we are investigating some kind of abuses. They don't like to spend some time with the journalists when it's time to answer. And I've been a journalist for 25 years. I've been investigating scandals, different kinds of scandals involving corruption, money laundering. I was investigating, as Xavier say, the big tobacco lobby, the tobacco industry, and especially Philip Morris, the company. I've been investigating a lot about tax evasion as well, tax avoidance, environmental crimes, human rights violation. And tomorrow you will be the leaders, and all your life you will have journalists like me knocking on your door to asking you sometimes, not all the times of course, journalists is not only about investigating problems, but sometimes you will have some investigative journalists who will ask you to answer. And because of that, you have a huge responsibility in your hands, because you will be the leaders of so many companies, and you will have to provide information to the public opinion. And sometimes it can be painful, of course. That's not an easy moment to sit down with a journalist who will ask you some question that sometimes things are going bad into a company, but it's so crucial for democracy to accept that journalists can work. There is really no democracy without freedom of the press. There is no democracy without access to information. So 25 years ago, I wanted to become a journalist. At that time, honestly, just to share something with you, when I was saying to my family, to my friends, I want to become a journalist because I like this work, I like to be curious, I like to ask questions, I like to tell the story that's in the most honest way, it was quite cool to become a journalist. It was, people were reacting like, oh, you will be traveling around the world, you will be witnessing the history in progress. And now, honestly, 25 years later, I don't know exactly what happened, but something happened. I try to avoid saying that I'm a journalist when I'm going into a dinner. Because people, there is a big distrust between the public opinion and the journalist. People will say, well, who are you working for exactly? Or maybe other ones will tell me, but I guess you're too close to the government, or you're too close to the billionaire who is the owner of your newspaper, for instance. Or you are working for some hidden agenda we don't know exactly about. And so there is a lot of suspicion. There is even some kind of, there was a former president of the United States of America was telling about the journalists that journalists are the enemy of the people. That's really serious what they say about journalists. We are facing disinformation industry that is really huge in front of us, where companies are spending millions in algorithm to provide fake news, to provide disinformation as a services, to manipulate election, to kill the reputation of an opponent, to kill the reputation of a journalist, just to make sure that they will create the conversation they want to create. So now, 25 years later, we are facing that kind of threats for democracy. Not only disinformation, but as well cyber surveillance. We reveal in 21 with the Forbidden Stories a large scandal called the Pegasus Affair, the Pegasus Project, that was about how people were surveilled all around the world because of that kind of spyware sold by a company to many state actors. So journalists are facing cyber surveillance, disinformation. Look at the situation, for instance, of the two Nobel Peace Prize, Maria Ressa in the Philippines. She has been prosecuted for years because of her journalism. Or Dmitry Muratov, who is the head of Novaya Gazeta. There is no more way to do some journalism in Russia, or Russian journalists are going abroad to do their work. And we know what is happening in countries where there is no journalist, where there is no journalism at all, where there is no freedom of the press. There is no more access to information. So this is why the situation changed a little bit about the 25 years. And sometimes even people ask me, but what is the role of a journalist in our society? What are you doing exactly? Or why, Laurent, do you think journalism is important? And now the way I try to answer this question is to use the number of journalists being killed. Say, look, for the past 20 years, more than 1,700 journalists have been killed for the past 20 years, according to Reporters Without Borders. And they were killed because they were carrying on a message to the public opinion. They were killed because they are changing the powerful. They were killed because they investigate sand trafficking, like Jagendra Singh in India. They were killed because they were investigating government corruption, like Daphne Caruana Galizia in Malta. They were killed because they were investigating human rights violation committed by countries like the Saudis, like Jamal Khashoggi was killed. Or they were killed because they were investigating the disinformation industry I was talking about, like Gauri Lankesh was killed in India while she was precisely investigating the fake news industry. So journalists got killed because they are investigating very, very important topics for all of us and for the future of the humanity. And the criminals we are facing, all of those guys are extremely organized. They are extremely powerful, they are very rich, and they have many friends. There is one way to confirm and to double-check that. Look at the level of impunity in Mexico, for instance. In more than 99% of the case, after the killing committed against a journalist, we will never find the killer. We will never find the mastermind. There is a level of impunity that is more than 99%. So we are facing that kind of global crime that is way more organized and way more global than before, than 20 years or 30 years ago. So facing that kind of global crime, we need a global network. We need to work together. Tax avoidance is not only a French issue, it's an American issue, it's an issue for all of us here. That's the money we are then missing for the schools. So it's a topic for our families living in the community here, for instance. So the situation had changed, so the crime are much more global, the situation is a bit different, and this is really why I believe really a lot in collaborative journalism. I really believe that collaborative journalism, to work together, to be able to team up even with your competitor, to address one issue, because this issue is global, because this issue is about tax avoidance, environmental crimes, human rights violation, corruption, it's worth it to team up. And this is why I believe in that. And because I believe in that, I started Forbidden Stories 6 years ago. That is about continuing the work, continuing the stories of other journalists who have been killed, who have been silenced. And I want to show you a video to show you what we have done so far.
Over the past 5 years, more than 300 journalists have been killed around the world. Forbidden Stories' mission is to ensure that their investigations do not disappear with them.
Forbidden Stories, an international network of journalists
designed to finish these stories and the investigations.
We pursue the work of assassinated, jailed, and threatened journalists worldwide.
Collaboration brings protection. Why kill a journalist if you have 50 others ready to carry on his work?
Since its creation, Forbidden Stories has published major investigations.
When a journalist is killed in India, in Mexico, or in Malta, it's never a local story. The crime is always global, so the answer has to be global.
For these dangerous investigations, our organization relies on an international network of 150 journalists. Alongside 60 media partners, our investigations are published in some 50 countries.
Forbidden Stories brings together journalists from around the world who are bound by this mission of telling truths that otherwise would be uncovered.
I feel like you guys have my back, and this feeling has come to me after a very long time.
To think about it like a many-headed hydra, I guess. You stop the story today, it will come back again tomorrow.
Our goal, to make sure people get access to critical information.
We learn from one another. We expand our resources. We have really large teams working on investigations. And when it comes to publishing, the impact is huge.
Our investigations have had an impact all over the world.
This is my phone. I take it everywhere, apparently. But now imagine your biggest enemy sits in this phone.
Desde hace 8 meses, 25 medios en el mundo investigamos la violencia contra los periodistas en México. ¿Puede tomar la decisión reabrir el caso de Regina Martínez, presidente?
We are going a step further by deterring crimes against journalists in the first place. Forbidden Stories has created the Safe Box Network. Journalists facing threats can protect sensitive information by sharing it with our global network of journalists.
Es muy bueno hacerle saber a quien está del otro lado que así le pase algo a uno, la investigación se va a publicar.
Forbidden Stories es una alternativa para blindar la información que es para la gente.
Access to information is priceless, but our investigations, our independence, have a price. We need your support.
Thank you. Thank you. So as we say at the end of the video, we need all support for anybody. So if after the conference you have any ideas to donate to any kind of non-profit, you're more than welcome. So Forbidden Stories, one of the main ideas is to amplify what others wanted to silence. And this is really, I think, why I was very interested by journalism, by becoming a journalist at the very beginning. I wanted really to show what is hidden. I wanted to investigate or to reveal what is silenced at some point, to show the big gap between the official speech. There is not always a big gap, of course. I'm not paranoid, I'm not a conspirationist, but sometimes there is. And to tell you about that, I can tell you as well, one of my very first, very important experience that was extremely difficult as well to experiment as a journalist. I spent 20 years ago 7 months undercover inside a cult. So at some point around me, someone told me that you should investigate this company that is officially pretending to offer some personal development. But in reality, there is a cult, there is a guru, and you're going to find victims who are brainwashed every day. You have a guru who is manipulating every day that, and it's not only happening in France, it's former guys from the Scientology who did create that new cult, and now they are based in 25 countries. So because that person told me that, I find a way with a former victim to infiltrate them. And so that was really my very first long-form investigation in a difficult situation. So I was doing that for the French Public Television. At that time, that was a TV show called Pièce à conviction. I was wearing a camera on me. It was a hidden camera because, of course, the organization were never giving any kind of interviews except that really official interview speaking about personal development. And I start with that camera and with that microphone on me, and I start witnessing how people were mistreated, how the leader of that company, the guru, was really harming the people by making them feel guilty about every single thing that they were doing in their life. And so I decided to film everything for 6 or 7 months. But after 3 months, they proposed me to work for them. So, of course, they didn't notice my camera, they didn't know that I was a journalist, they thought I was just a volunteer and someone was interested by the kind of classes they were offering. And so I accept the deal, and the deal was to work for free, of course, because most of the people here, except 5 people who were paid, 25 other people were working for free, cleaning the restroom, for instance, and doing everything for the food for the guru and anything else. But they proposed me a very interesting job that was about to work for the financial department. So I used to be the one guy who were paying the staff and asking the people to pay for all the classes. And so, of course, at the end, I revealed my identity, my true identity as a journalist. I asked for an unofficial interview, and we broadcast the TV investigation. And right after that, I really can see how we can have some impact as a journalist, because for years the government and the authorities were not really controlling seriously that. But because of the audience and because of the publicity and because of the explanation we were providing, with not only with the footage that we were able to get, but also with former victims who were, or specialists or therapists who were explaining what is brainwashing, what is a cult, how dangerous it is. And so because of all of that, the cult was closed the day after the broadcast. An official investigation was done. There were a story about a crime committed by someone who was part of the cult as well. And so that was the first investigation, very serious investigation I did. And at that time, I started receiving some kind of question, and I used to be asked the same question. What is the difference between a journalist and a prosecutor? What is the difference between a journalist and a policeman, for instance? And that's a very important question, because there is a big difference. We don't have any weapons. We are not here because we receive a mandate to do that. We have no force. We have no way to convince people to talk except to explain them that it's just for the general interest, because we need to receive answers, and the stories we will publish will help the people to decide about, should I buy this brand? Should I vote for that people? And this is what we call freedom of the press. And so there is a huge difference between prosecutor and a cop. But sometimes it could be difficult to precisely define what journalism is about. And there is one definition that is this one. I don't know if you see that on the screen. There is this slide of that definition of George Orwell that I really like. Journalism is printing what someone else does not want published. Everything else is public relation. And I think this is really not the only way, but one way to define what journalism is about. And this is very, I think, interesting now in the discussion we do have now, especially with you guys who will be running companies, will be managing a lot of human resources, will be thinking about solutions for the planet, and how to communicate about that, and how to deal with the journalists. Because public relation is really, I spend a lot of time, as I was explaining, with the PR people. And I remember when I were co-founding Cash Investigation with Elise Lucet and Jean-Pierre Canet in 2011, at the beginning we were press officer around CEOs, asking them for an interview because we were investigating greenwashing, for instance, or other kind of the pharmaceutical industry for some medicines who were having some side effect extremely dangerous. And the answer at that time we were receiving, it was in 2011, was, oh, yes, but no, we won't communicate on that because that's not part of the plan of communication. And so I was saying, it's not a question of communication, it's a question of information. And this is why this word of public relation and what is the difference between communication and information is really key. On our side, we have to be extremely careful as a journalist. Otherwise, you can sue us. And that's fine to be sued as a journalist. We're not above the law. If you think that we are defaming, if we think that we are telling some fake news, or if we think that we didn't check some facts, you can sue us. And then we can explain how we get the evidence, and we can show the evidence, and then the judge will judge the case. But it's very important to have that in mind, that around you will work with a lot of PR people, and to admit that it's important to answer journalists. And I can give you one tip as well. is that one thing that we are doing when we are preparing an interview of some CEOs, we are always going to the website of the companies, of course, that's quite easy and obvious, and we directly look to the chart, to the values of the company. What are the values that the company is officially saying that they do have? And that's important to check because after 2008, there was the big financial crisis with the subprime crisis. And at that time, I remember all the banks were communicating exactly in the same way. They were producing advertisement exactly with the same narrative that we will be transparent. Ask us any question, we will be transparent. You deserve transparency. And so when we started this magazine in 2011, we based the magazine on that kind of promises. You are telling us that you will be transparent. So now we have some questions. So you should be transparent, and that's something that is very important to be very cautious with the values that you are officially talking about. But that is great because I've seen before coming on my road that here. The values are humanism, responsibility, openness, so that's quite important. And that's, I think, very key in the way to run your future companies. Because what I've been investigating sometimes, I'm sorry again to talk only about the dark side of not journalism, but the information. And journalism, again, is not only about investigating dirty businesses, but that was my role, and that is my role, and this is why we are doing investigation. But I remember sometimes, to tell you about the cynicism, I did a long investigation as well on the tobacco industry. And at some point, I was investigating Philip Morris International, which is, of course, one of the biggest company, because an agency that was providing consultancy to PMI, to Philip Morris, was commission asked by Philip Morris to find a new way to convince government to let the people smoke and to reduce the tax on the sale of the cigarettes. And this small agency found a very innovative idea, and they say, well, we have an idea about how to convince governments. We can explain then that because of the sale of the cigarette, people will smoke, and then they will die because of that. And they calculate the age people were dying. And they found out that finally people were dying between their 60s and 70s, precisely at the time where they were not working anymore, and precisely at the time where the government were supposed to provide them some pension. So they say to some governments, and that's true, that's a way to convince people, to convince the government that people will die, so it's less money to spend in pensions. So when I got that document, I went to the Philip Morris International headquarters. I asked for an interview. They say no for 2 months, and at the end they come with a spokesperson, not the CEO. So they found a spokesperson. So that's another thing that you can do later. If you don't want to answer directly, you can find a spokesperson, which is way better than no answering at all. But the spokesperson were not touching the documents, not saying that it was not aware about that, and was minimizing all the time the thing. And then, of course, as always, after the interview, you receive some statement where the company is saying that we will never do that again, or that was really something quite small in our development strategy, and we will not develop that anymore. That was one investigation about that. Another investigation I wanted to share with you, it's an investigation that convinced me to create Forbidden Stories, that convinced me about the need to work together, that convinced me to be not the lone wolf reporters I was before, because when you are going to the journalism school, so I didn't went to the journalism school, but most of the time it's about like that. You are trained to become a lone wolf reporters. You are trained to work alone. You are trained to be the only one on stage with your word, the only one in contact with your sources, and you are competing. It's a very competitive industry. You are competing with each other. So this is the main model. And the other model I believe in is, as you know, is collaborative journalism. And I do believe in that because of one investigation in Azerbaijan. In 2014, I was working for Cash Investigation, and I did ask François Hollande, the former French president, if he would be okay to have me on board with him during 2 official visits, one in Kazakhstan and the other one in Azerbaijan. And my plan was to do a documentary called My President is on Business Trip, because I wanted to know how you deal with human rights issue when you are the president of a democracy like France, with all the history on human rights. But at the same time, you want to sign contracts to import oil and gas. So how do you deal with that? Do you meet some journalists who have been jailed? Do you only meet the Minister of the Energy of that country you are visiting? So he told me, yes, that's fine. And so he was okay for that. And I went on I was traveling with the official plane of the presidency. And on the ground, I was following that. But after François Hollande left the country, I decided to stay over there to meet former political prisoner, journalists, and people who were talking about corruption. And that country is really a country that is corrupting a lot of European companies, but also European institutions. MEPs have been sentenced for that, for instance. So it's really not a theory, that's a reality. And of course, after 2 or 3 days, I was arrested over there. And I was arrested, and because I was French, I was very lucky. I was arrested only for 2 or 3 hours, sent back to France. They were searching for some device and memory stick. And, but for the very same kind of investigation, the very same kind of topic, other journalists, like Khadija Ismailova, were jailed. Months later, Khadija Ismailova, one of the very last journalists in Azerbaijan, was arrested and sentenced for 18 months. And at that time, I was back to France, I was editing the story, I was working on my documentary, My President is on Business Trip, and Khadija was in jail. And of course, I knew her, she was a friend, I was, as other friends, very worried about her, and I tried to communicate a little bit with her through some lawyers to send some words of support to her. And I received a letter, and at some point I received a short answer that I'm going to show you. That piece of paper on the screen you can see, so it's a photograph, it's a picture of the piece of paper. Is Laurent, is your film ready? Remember, I told you the importance of uncovering corruption in Council of Europe. Time to do it. Khadija Ismailova. So I received that small piece of paper that Khadija was writing in the darkness of her cell. And that letter, convinced me about the need to do something about the other ones who have been silenced. I can tell you as well about another thing that convinced me and gave me the strength to create Forbidden Stories. That was the same year, 2015, that I received the letter. In January 2015, the terrorist attack against Charlie Hebdo happened, and at that time, I used to work for a company called Première Ligne that was right next the door and the offices of Charlie Hebdo. That day, at the time of the attack, I was not inside the building. I arrived 2 minutes after the terrorists escaped the building. And I was amongst other people, among the first to help the survivors, to go inside the Charlie Hebdo offices, to do everything we can to help for some dozens of minutes. And that event, that terrorist attack, was extremely, of course, extremely traumatic for all the people here. Was an entire disaster, and really after that, I started thinking about what I can do as a journalist after that. I wanted to stay a journalist, but I wanted to think about what I can do from that. And I was precisely at that time working on the Azerbaijani stories, receiving that letter of Khadija. And for me, it was quite obvious that we needed to create a consortium whose mission will be about to continue the work of others who have been silenced, who have been jailed, who have been threatened, who have been killed. And so I thought about creating forbidden stories to make sure that people would get access to the information people wanted to silence, but as well to show and to send a strong signal to enemies of the free press, to tell them, you kill the messenger, but we never kill the message. And this is what Forbidden Stories is about. And so a friend of mine at that time told me, you should apply to a university in the US, at the University of Michigan. They are offering some kind of fellowship for mid-career journalists. And maybe if you're lucky, you can have some 1 year to think about your project, to start fundraising, to start creating a team, and to have some freedom with your brain, for your brain, to think about a new path. And so this is how 6 years ago I created Forbidden Stories. To tell you about some project we did, the Daphne project. So I mentioned the Daphne project already, but Daphne was in Malta, a European country. She was killed as she was investigating corruption, and it was our first collaboration. And collaboration is really extremely important for us. First, collaboration is bringing protection. It doesn't make sense to kill reporters if you have 100 other reporters who are doing the same. So this is why collaboration is bringing protection, why it's necessary when we are doing that kind of investigation to be united. So it's not that easy to do that, honestly. It's easy to say, difficult to do, but we were able to do that. You have to convince news organizations to work together. And it could be difficult because you have to find some compromise when to publish. You are publishing the same story, same project in many continents at the same time. Another thing is you have to work with human beings as well. So you might have some ego issues as well. And it's of course, something to take in consideration about how to work together, how to split the work. So one way we are doing is that we are identifying a topic, we are convincing the partners to be on board. On this one, the Pegasus project, we were 180 reporters working on that. That was about cyber surveillance and journalists. And we are splitting the work in different teams. And this is why collaboration makes sense, because you have much more resources. So collaboration brings protection, brings resources. One team in Paris can go in one country outside, while another team from North America can visit another country. So, and at the end, we are all sharing our draft. Everyone is responsible to publish their own stories. Everyone remained independent, and we are just here to facilitate and to coordinate. This one was, the Pegasus project was extremely difficult to run. We were talking about cyber surveillance, and at that time, we were investigating, so the company NSO, but not NSO is the one who is selling the spyware, the Pegasus spyware, but we were investigating dangerous states like the Saudis or Mexico, Azerbaijan, who were using that spyware to surveil people. They were surveilling dissidents, they were surveilling political opponents, they were surveilling, are you with me? Thank you. They were surveilling everybody. And so we were investigating that, but we were afraid about something. We didn't want to be the next one on the list. So we had to team up with, from the very beginning, with the Amnesty International Security Lab, who were having a lot of experience in investigating the Pegasus spyware, but also a lot of experience in creating some digital tools so we can really communicate safely in some platforms and without being surveilled ourselves. And about protection and about collaboration, this is something I think that we need really now to teach in journalism school. Last year I was teaching at Sciences Po about collaborative journalism, and I can show you something that I'm showing to the students. This is so the lone wolf reporter on one hand, on the left side, as you can see, versus the collaborative journalism. So on one hand, the main model is that one on the left side. On the other side, what is difficult is that you have to share all the time what you're doing. And sometimes it's not easy because you are trained not to share. On the left side, when you are the lone wolf reporters, like I was for years, it's easy. You don't have any kind of compromise to make. You are alone on your way, on your path, and it's not difficult to take decision. You don't waste too much time in taking decision. While on the other side, you are constantly in conference calls, so you might have a burnout from that. But on the left side, when you do work alone, your reporting is very limited. It's hard to find the resources to travel everywhere you want to go if the story is a global story. While on the other side, when you are teaming up with 80 reporters, the world is yours, because you can ask your colleague from Nigeria, you can ask your colleague from Brazil, what do they think about this tax documents, for instance, or this crime committed in that country, for instance. When you learn, of course, you are much more under pressure than when you are teaming up with a team that will never let you down. And you have 10 friends when you learn and 1,000 friends when you do work with other ones. So this is just something to explain how I believe that the spirit of collaborative journalism is really a new paradigm for journalism and for access to information, especially when we are facing that kind of global crime. Talking about protection as well, there is something that is extremely common when you look at the profile of people being killed, of the journalists being killed over the past years. Most of them are very isolated, like Cecilio Pineda, who were killed in Mexico, or Rafael Moreno, who were killed in Colombia, or even Daphne Caruana Galizia. There were journalists who were publishing on their own, on their blog, on their Facebook wall, with no more support from any kind of newsroom because it was too dangerous to be journalists or to be newspapers. And so that kind of situation where the journalist is alone, where the journalist is isolated, is really what is producing impunity, because the killers are seeing that, of course, and they think that they can get away easily after the killing because those people are really in remote area and very alone. So when I was applying for the fellowship in the Michigan University, I started thinking about a new approach. And I started thinking about, this envelope that you can see in the movies. When someone is giving you an envelope and telling you that, if something is happening to me, open the envelope, and then you will understand everything. And I started thinking that way about why not about creating a kind of safe box for the journalists who are the most at risk. And they can secure their ongoing investigation, and if something happens, then we open the safe box, and then we will be able to continue their work. And so I spent a lot of time on that, and now it's a reality. We have almost 100 reporters all around the world who are very at risk in different parts of the world, in Mexico, in Philippines, in Nigeria, who are using that. And that's, I really believe in that, because Forbidden Stories is really about that. It's about the connection between at-risk journalists and the one like hers in Paris who are not at risk at all. And I want to show you a video about the SafeBox network that is maybe ready now.
Si a mí me hacen algo, no queda aquí. Ni muerto me van a callar.
Digamos, si me voy de este mundo mañana, quiero que esta historia se conozca.
Some people want to silence them because their investigations are disturbing. All over the world, journalists are jailed, kidnapped, and murdered, depriving millions of people of information of general interest.
Entonces hay miedo, tenemos miedo. Y queremos seguir investigando.
So that their investigations don't disappear with them, we created the SafeBox Network. Journalists under threat can secure sensitive information by sharing it with our global network of journalists.
Es una muestra, honestamente, que de que hay un respaldo, o sea, que no estamos solos.
If Gabriella, Jairo, Jonathan, and the others are prevented from doing their work, Forbidden Stories will pursue their investigations and publish them worldwide.
Forbidden Stories, an international network of journalists
designed to finish these stories and the investigations.
Va a resultar claramente disuasivo para quienes intenten frenar lo que estamos haciendo.
Y es muy bueno hacerle saber a quien está del otro lado que así le pase algo a uno, la investigación se va a publicar.
Los grupos lo pensaran 2 veces antes de hacer una acción de este tipo.
I finally feel like I'm not alone anymore.
Creo que de alguna manera protege nuestro trabajo y nuestra vida.
Thank you. So this is also about thinking about what really the killers are really afraid. Are they more afraid about a statement, or because when we see the level of impunity, we don't see too many things changing over the years. And so I really believe and hope that the Safe Box Network can help, because we have more and more journalists like Alfredo Guachiri in Paraguay, who was explaining publicly that for his own safety, he decided to share with Forbidden Stories his ongoing investigation. And many journalists around the world are doing the same. They are claiming that they are not anymore alone. They're explaining that they do have a connection right now. They are not anymore alone. And I believe that the killers, a way to dissuade them is to explain them that the story will survive in any cases. And then that journalism is the best way to defend journalism. And I think that they are much more afraid about having their own crimes exposed, having the name of their middlemen exposed, having the name of their company involved in some kind of environmental crimes exposed. And I think they are much more afraid about that compared to a statement. So this is why I believe a lot in the continuation of the stories of others who have been killed. Just before taking some question, I'm almost at the end of my presentation. I'm very happy to discuss with you later. Just going back to the very beginning about some tips about how you should react when you will see an investigative journalist knocking on your door. Maybe some advice. Maybe you will think. Maybe you will hesitate. Should I answer this email, or that's going to be another story that I really know in advance what the journalist is going to talk about, or should I say yes or should I say no? Of course, I will suggest and recommend that you should say yes, because think about one thing. Our readers, our viewers will be also your customers. So that's something to really take in consideration. So next time, answer the email of the journalist who will be emailing you. Something important as well. That's about managing a company, I think. And I'm now the CEO of a company as well, so I'm including myself inside. But instead of chasing the whistleblower, the source within the company, most of the time we as a journalist, we receive documentation from employees who think that it's important for the public opinion to reveal that fact, because that's about the pollution, that's about the health, and so people should know about that. So don't prosecute internally the whistleblower within your company. That's important. We have seen that when we were investigating LuxLeaks, the tax avoidance in Luxembourg, the company PricewaterhouseCoopers were prosecuting whistleblower within the company, and that's really a catastrophe for democracy. Don't put your hand on the camera. Never do that. We will show that. That's really important to accept the conversation. Don't run slap action against newsroom at the same time. This is a global trend, actually. We are sued right now by the Kingdom of Morocco. They are not only suing us, Forbidden Stories, they are suing Amnesty International, they are suing Le Monde, Die Zeit, the Deutsche Zeitung, Radio France as a slap action. So slap action is a way where you want to produce some censorship, and so you decide with lawyers that you pay a lot to run multiple legal attack against journalists for the very same story. Don't call our bosses behind our back. This is really something that is kind of a trend. Don't advertise or promise to be transparent if you're not transparent with the journalist. That's quite obvious. And especially for France, which is a very serious situation now, don't take the control of every newspaper, otherwise you will kill press freedom. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Laurent, for this amazing story. That's not a forbidden one, but your story, for an amazing one. I'm just going to call on stage the students who prepared their question. If they want to come here, please. Thank you. We have 3 students and a 4th one. Yeah, before we're just waiting for the students, I just want to maybe ask you a question, Laurent, because I was wondering what drives you. Is it something that you want to do good? Or is it because you want that people respect the law? But actually you're not a lawyer as well as you're not a prosecutor. So I would like to say, I was wondering what drives you at the end of the day. Is it doing good or something else? Maybe you can just stay here and I will give you the mic.
Sure. I think it's honestly hard to answer in a short sentence. I think that what drives me in doing that is a question that I'm often asking about myself, but I think that everybody's asking about himself, that how I can be useful, how I can make a difference. If I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a prosecutor, I'm not a cop, but I'm a journalist. So being a journalist is fantastic because you are meeting a lot of people and you have a huge responsibility, that is to listen in the most honest way, the stories of people, the story of a country, the story of a company, and try to produce a paper, produce a documentary that will tell in a very honest way what is going on about a precise topic. So what drives me is, I think, that need to serve my community, to serve, to be useful, and to investigate as well, to challenge the powerful as well. And I think it's a way to be useful when you are investigating the tobacco company, because you know how the damages they are creating. It's a scientific fact. So it's I don't see journalism as the only solution or the only counterpower to do that. Of course, it's really part of and everyone needs to stay on this role, and we can be prosecuted. That's fine, not through some slap action, of course, but that's I think that drives me, the need to be useful.
Thank you very much.
So you told us how important it was to be a collaborative journalist, and you also told us that you were 180 persons to work on the Pegasus case. So my question is, who are these persons who work with you, and why are they ready to take such risks? And finally, how you manage them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we do work with people who have that kind of generosity as well, who think that collaborative journalism is interesting because if we address the question of the cyber surveillance only from a French point of view, that doesn't make sense, because you need to address that globally. Or if you address the disinformation, if you investigate the disinformation industry, it's happening everywhere in the world, and we are facing a global economy as well, a global industry. So when partners from The Guardian, from the Washington Post are joining the project on board, they know that they will investigate, but they will benefit from the others as well. So it's a win-win solution, and our work is to coordinate that and to facilitate and to make sure that everybody is on board, everybody has the same rights as well, same voices, whether you are coming from a very small news outlet or coming from a large outlet from a country. So this is our daily-based role.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So hello, Laurent, and thank you for this inspiring story of yours. I wanted to know, is there like a a story that, not a story, but a experience that deeply moved you, that inspired you during all these years as a journalist?
Yeah, as I was explaining the story in Azerbaijan, what happened against Charlie Hebdo, not only that, I think it's the fact that when you see that in those countries are really entirely blocked and closed, like in Azerbaijan. So the media are controlled, the news are controlled. But so sometimes the only way to tell a story is to do the investigation from outside. And then and the only way to question even the president of Azerbaijan, for instance, was to be in Paris and to ask the question while he was visiting François Hollande as well. So that kind of experience along the year, convinced me of the need of creating that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. So yeah, I wanted to say that I really like your idea of creating forbidden stories and like to dedicate your life to it and to establish justice. But my question would be like, how do you manage the balance between, on one hand, like pursuing the truth, but also on the other hand, I'd say protecting your team in such deadly environment?
Yeah. So the question of the safety of the people who are working with us is really key. When we are evaluating before going on a story, we are doing a risk assessment that is extremely serious. We are doing that with local journalists who know way better than us the situation. And the main difference for them that they will be in the country at the time of the publication and after the publication, while we will be back in Paris, for instance. So we have to think really about that way before and to have enough time. One key thing is the time you have. You need to have time to, if you go too fast, you can make a mistake, and the mistake could be really little. So the way to address the question of the risk is to first to address that in a collaborative way, listen from your partners, then to make sure that you have skilled people, talented people with experience who will be joining the team as well. And I believe really that what is bringing, again, protection is the collaboration. The fact we are 80 or we are 100, and we make that very visible when we are sending some requests for comment to some bad guys in Mexico, for instance. We are explaining that we are 30 newspapers writing that, and we put all the names of the people. So the people who are receiving that, they start understanding immediately that who they are in front of them, and who is in front of them, and who is asking the question, and that we are unstoppable.
That was very clear. Thank you.
Thank you for answering our questions. To finish, we would like to know what advice can you give to a student that wants to start a career in journalism? Like which qualities do they need to have?
Which advice you mean?
Which advice can you give to a student that wants to start a career in journalism?
Yeah, I think so. I can give different advice. On my advice that I'm giving a lot of time in School of Journalism for those who want to become journalists is not to follow too much the path that the school or the ecosystem is preparing for you. And I know that most of the schools have in mind the fact that it's good if the people have job after they go out of the school, of course. But in the meantime, most of the time in journalism school, we are telling you, okay, after the school, go to the AFP for an internship. You stay 3 months there. Then you go to LCE or BFM. You're going to stay 2 years there. Then you move from that desk to another desk. You will be specialized in police, justice, or terrorism, or things like that. And then maybe after 20 years, you can start doing documentaries, because you will want to do some documentaries, because you will want to have more time, and you will want to travel, and so on. And so that's a kind of official path that is really designed for you from the very beginning. I think I think it could be a very good path. Honestly, there is no bad path, but the best thing is to be able to choose. In my case, what I did, so I wanted to become a lawyer at the beginning, but while I was in the faculty, I started doing some radio, and doing some radio show was very interesting for me. And then I started working as an intern for a local TV station in Toulouse, in south of France. And after 4 years at the Law University, I started to forget about that and focusing only on journalism. And I wanted to just listen to my passion. And I wanted to listen only to that, and only my passion and the topics I wanted to uncover will tell me what I should do, what will be the next story. This is how I did a story on the Kashmir Valley, because I went in the house of my dad, and he was having a National Geographic on the table, and there were 2 pages on the conflict in that paradise between India and Pakistan, close to Himalaya, and I wanted to go there. And then after that, some people told me about that cult in Paris, and then I went to Iraq as well 2 times. So I just wanted to do some long-form stories without waiting people who will give me the right to do that. And honestly, when you are 22 years old, nobody will give you the right to do a documentary. So you have to be the one doing that first and show and come. So I was paying myself the trips. I didn't went too much on vacation at the beginning, between my 20s and 30s. And I paid myself the trip to Iraq, to Palestine, to Kashmir, and stay over there with a friend of mine who was having a camera. And the 2 of us, we were doing our own reportings on our own funding, and it works 100% of the time. We came back, we pitched the idea, we showed the footage, and we sold the story. So this is how I started.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, dear students, to come on stage. And again, a big round of applause for Laurent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Laurent.